Hello, and welcome to the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Baines. We are gaining an impressive library of Christian fiction authors. If you are new to this podcast, look back on previous episodes to discover a writer that catches your imagination. Please hit that subscribe button so you are alerted to new episodes as they are published. We appreciate it anytime someone gives us a like. That's how we know we're reaching people. Leave a comment so we can interact with you. What did you like or not like about this episode or the podcast in general? I try to answer or respond to every comment as other commenters can verify, both of them. Okay, let's get to this episode's guest. Well, hello. We're talking with Tripp Berry on this episode, and Tripp, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Tripp Berry. I live in Maine, and I'm a Christian man, a business owner, an engineer, and a banker too. And I write books on the side. And with my wife, we're both Christian authors. And I wrote a series called The War of the Nephilim.
So, where do you live, Tripp?
I live in Jay, Maine, the western foothills mountains of Maine. I grew up here.
That's, of course, if you live anywhere in Maine, you could say you don't live too far from Canada.
That's right.
or the Atlantic.
That's right. Maine is one of those places we can ski in the afternoon and we can go out on the bay in the evening.
Yeah, I like Maine a lot. My wife and I took our mountain bikes up to Prince Edward Island and got to drive up through Maine.
Maine is one of the most beautiful states, though I have been out west, and it's really hard to compare to places like Utah.
You're right. Utah is one of my favorite places, but you know, I've lived in several places, and people always say, "Oh, you really lucked out this time. You're in God's country." And I always shake my head, yes. You don't want to start out living in a place where you say, "No, this is the pits." Anyway, Maine is a beautiful place, and I'm not just saying that. But is there some place not too far from where you live where you like to go and just kind of refresh yourself, recharge your batteries?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I have a camp on the north end of Maine's largest lake called Moosehead Lake, built by my grandfather back in the 1950s. It's still in the family, and I go there to refresh, to be with God, to write. I've written a lot of my books at camp on Moosehead Lake. In Maine, we call it heading up to camp.
You folks do have your own special dialect up there.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of talking with a fellow once that talked about going out his rear dooryard. Just had a hard time figuring out what he was talking about. Is going out his back door into his backyard, his rear dooryard.
That's right. We have dooryards here in Maine. If you say the dog's laying out in the dooryard, we all know where that is.
Well, this should be kind of interesting because I have a slight accent myself. It's a little more to the south, though, than as yours is to the north. I like to give our audience a good dose of our authors. So I think if they start to know a little bit about the authors, they become interested in the books the authors write. And so I ask a few questions that are maybe a little bit odd, not about your writing, which we'll get to. But another question I like to ask, besides where do you go to recharge your batteries, is do you have 3 favorite songs?
Oh, goodness. I was just listening to Diving In by Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I love that one. And pretty much anything by Peter Furler. I cut my teeth on music. It bounced around. I was a child in the 70s and 80s. And then in the 90s, I went to college. I became a Christian, and then my music taste went to Christian music. And so a lot of it is from the 90s and the early 2000s, Newsboys and Audio
Oh, yeah.
Adrenaline. And so it's hard for me to name a specific song, but my Spotify playlist is full of artists like that.
How about your movies? Do you have three favorite movies?
I absolutely do. In fact, I thought about this when I saw your second podcast just earlier today. Um, I would say my three favorite movies is Empire Strikes Back,
Oh,
Raiders of the Lost Ark,
yeah.
and National Treasure. All of them action and adventure.
Yeah,
That's
interesting. So tell us a little bit more about your walk with Christ.
uh, I I I became a Christian, and God got a hold of me while I was in college through what was then known as the Campus Crusade for Christ organization.
Yeah.
Today they're called Crew. Um, and in college, I met my wife, and she had long been a Christian, and I became a Christian, accepted God, um, and followed the Lord, and have ever since. And for a long time, that meant just raising my three sons, doing my best to raise them in the church. And then I started to help more. I spent oh goodness, a couple of decades with youth groups, helping with middle schoolers and teenagers. I tend to gravitate towards the middle schoolers because I'm about at that maturity level on the inside. Um, and I still do Sunday school. I had to give up
Hmm.
the youth groups. I just couldn't keep up with them anymore.
Yeah.
But I still do the Sunday schools at the church. My boys have all grown up and gone, but I still enjoy that with them.
That's one of my favorite questions, and we learn a lot about the person when we ask them about their walk with Christ. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Mhm.
So what inspired you to become an author?
I've always wanted to be an author. Way back in high school, a friend of mine who wanted to be an author and I would write adventure stories back and forth to each other.
Hmm.
And it wasn't, this was long before email or internet. This was notebook pages out of a spiral notebook.
Yeah.
And once we'd write something at night and then we'd tear it out, it'd just be a couple of pages and we'd tear it out and swap them out on the bus and read them. And thankfully, none of those exist any longer because that was really bad. Um, in college, I had to decide. I wanted to be an engineer and I wanted to be an author. And at that time, I thought I had to choose one or the other.
Oh.
I chose to be an engineer. Uh, Now, years later, I realized that they're not mutually exclusive. I've been writing for 7 or 8 years now,
Yeah.
and have produced 8 books while being an engineer and a business owner. You can do this on the side.
Definitely, you can. If that's what you want to do, you'll do it.
Right. It helps in my case that my wife is also an author. So when we go on vacation or camping in the RV, or just on the weekend, you can find us sitting side by side writing together.
That's interesting. She understands what when you're just staring out the window. She doesn't say, "What are you thinking about?" Because she knows
She already
you're
knows. Well,
you're
she knows me
plotting.
better than anyone, I think. But yeah.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, your faith must really influence your writing.
It does. My first couple of books were nonfiction. I wrote to business owners in the area that I saw were having troubles. Uh, when I started writing fiction, I I wrote what I wanted to read, and I wrote with a Christian themes, whether it's belief or love or faith, um, or redemption. These are all different themes that I tried to highlight in each of my books.
Well, you've already given us a little bit of your background of being an engineer, and I imagine you spent a lot of your free time in the summers at your, I think you said your grandfather's camp. Um, Are there other things in your background that maybe have been pivotal for you?
A great family has been pivotal for me. I couldn't do any of this without my grandfather, my parents. A strong family gives a man a lot of advantages in life. So I certainly want to credit them. Growing up where I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up in very rural, wooded areas of Maine, and that gave me a love for the outdoors. And so a lot of my stories are written in the outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. You'll see different parts of it. You'll see ocean scenes because I learned to sail in the Casco Bay in outside of Portland, Maine. And you'll see mountainous areas where I grew up in the mountains of Maine, and a lot of forested stuff where that's where I grew up. Any given afternoon when I was young, you'd find me running around the woods with a dog and a BB gun and generally wreaking havoc.
Yeah.
And and that comes out in a lot of the books, I think.
I imagine. So, what genre do you write?
I write. Well, it's interesting. I I've read and learned some things from other authors that you should try to write in a genre that is clearly defined so that readers can understand what it is they're buying. And I
Yeah.
failed on that lesson. I wrote what I wanted to read, and it doesn't neatly fit into any particular genre. It's very, I think when people ask me, I just tell them Christian fantasy. And
Yeah.
uh, or I'll say Christian action adventure. And it is more action adventure than it is fantasy. I try to write things that are practical that could have been or definitely were, because it's my practical side from my engineering side, left brain,
Mm-hmm.
right brain, right? So part of my brain says, hey, this has got to come off as real because
Yeah.
it probably was real or something like it. Uh, and and so the fantasy elements, some of the fantasy stories are very fantastical, which they should be because it's fantasy.
Right. Right.
Uh, and mine has fantastical elements, but I wrote a lot of my stories are written in a pre-flood or antediluvian
Hmm.
world where I believe that world was not a lot like the one we have now. And so I can write this and it can come off as a Christian fantasy, but the world may very well have looked something similar to that. I am not a
Hmm.
scientist, though, nor am I a theologian, so I make no contention that it actually was that way. I'm just simply saying it might have been.
It reminds me of what they've done at the Ark Experience in
Mm.
Kentucky. I don't know whether you've seen any of their little videos, but they have the pre-flood. They have a reporter coming around saying, Noah, what's this all about? Are you crazy or what? So they have a lot of fun imagining what things were like uh, pre-flood, and then as you watch the videos, eventually they have some of the same characters that were obnoxious in the pre-flood, giving Noah a hard time, are obnoxious today, giving people a hard time. So,
That's right.
uh,
Several years ago, my wife and I took the RV with the boys, and before they left, and we went down there.
oh,
So I've
great.
been to the
Yeah.
Ark Encounter, I've been to the Creation Museum, and a huge fan of that. If any of your listeners are wondering, should I really go? This is biblically sound
Yes. Yes.
and relevant information, very much so.
I have always kind of stumbled over the verse, and I'm sorry I can't give you chapter and everything, but God is not slow as some may think. He's not tearing, but uh, he waits so that all can be saved, something like that. And in my analytical mind, I thought, well, if you wanted to minimize the number of people going to hell right after Christ was resurrected, you should have come back and ended it all then, because that's statistically the fewest number of people. But
Right.
I saw that verse when I was at the Ark, and it really hit me. He was waiting for me.
Yes. Yes, he was.
So yeah, I've got a soft spot in my heart for the Ark. It's very good. So we're going down a long rabbit trail here, but that's okay.
That's all right.
Uh, your latest book. What inspired you to write your latest book?
I have an action and adventure heart. That came out with the three movies. I have just a love of all things action and adventure. Uh, but it's got to be somewhat realistic, or might have been realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the clever use of limited resources. I think of Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings and the way that ended, and how he wrote something just very clever. Like the main character did something clever. The problem with that, of course, is that means us authors have to try to be clever too,
Yeah.
and that can be a real challenge. But what made me write it was I was always fascinated with what the pre-flood world might look like. Once I came to grips with the fact that the Earth was not millions of years old. When I came to grips with no, that's all false. The biblical narrative actually fits the evidence better. I'm no apologist and I'm no scientist, but I did take some college level geography, chemistry, physics. Like I'm not super smart, but I could put the pieces together. Bottom line, what attracted me to God was that I could see that the earth was designed, that this was not some accident, that these are not random systems. This is a design. And once as an engineer, my brain just works that way. I know a design when I see one.
Right.
And once I realized that the biblical narrative was true. I worried about that for a while until I started hearing about like Answers in Genesis, the Creation Research Institute, and there were other groups. And I started checking out some of that, and I realized that no, the evidence actually does support that. Then I became fascinated in a pre-flood world. There's all sorts of depictions of that in many different literature. And I wanted to write in that area because I felt that would be fascinating to write about. People who lived to be pushing 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
What could they learn? What could they accomplish? What could they, and how would they waste it? Because the world was an evil place at that time. And what lessons could I teach from that? What were the Nephilim or Nephilim? Some different people pronounce it different ways, and there's no right or wrong way. What were they, and how did they fit in? And does this mean that men and dinosaurs, walked the earth together? And what would man do with dinosaurs if we had them around? Some of them we'd run from.
Oh, yeah.
But we're men, and we would probably manage to use most of them.
Right.
So I wanted to put together a story that I thought might represent what the pre-flood world would look like. That's my setting. Now I'm telling stories about some main characters in that setting that are out to take care of themselves first, then learn that God will take care of them if they have faith and follow Him.
Interesting.
So those are the storylines. The last book I wrote was book 5 in that series. It was called Hero of Alnir. And it's told from the perspective of a very adventurous 13-year-old boy that gets himself into some trouble and has to learn that there is no such thing as luck, and that when you're in the will of God, nothing can stop you. So that was a fun lesson to try to, or a fun theme to try to teach in an adventure story.
I think that's the beauty of Christian fiction. I've talked a little bit about the very first Christian fiction writer was Christ. His parables were fiction that taught a real factual truth. And I don't know. I've not had anyone say, you really can't say Christ was telling fiction stuff, but he used examples that could have fit anyone.
Absolutely.
So I call that fiction.
Absolutely. No, it is. The prodigal son was we like to refer to
Yeah,
that as a real story, but that was a fictional story that Christ used to demonstrate some really, really important theological points.
exactly. Yeah.
When I think about how clever he was, it blows my mind a little bit with some of these stories.
And if you understand the customs at that time, that makes that story even more poignant, or it emphasizes what was going on. To welcome back such a son was probably not, well, it was probably frowned on because he'd already
Right.
disparaged his parents or whatever.
Yeah.
I did come up with a question as you were talking about the pre-flood time in your studies. Did you find that it didn't rain before the flood? That we just had a heavy dew?
No. I believe that to be a relatively common myth among Christian
Huh.
circles. Answers in Genesis answered this on their website, and relatively definitively. I believe there were oceans before the flood. I do
Yeah.
not believe they were as big or as deep as they are now, because the floodwaters are still here. The earth is 70% water. And so if there were oceans, and I think there were because we see the evidence of marine life in the fossil record,
Certainly.
then if there were oceans, there had to have been rain. Waters would still evaporate, and then it would still have to fall out. So
The hydrological cycle would have had to have been in effect. I mean, God put it in effect. But I'd always thought that would be if rain wasn't really a part of it, just a heavy dew that would still accomplish the cycle. That when it started raining, it would terrorize everybody if they'd never seen it before.
I haven't gotten to the scene where the flood actually happens yet. My stories have started roughly 50 years before the flood. So, but I did make a point of doing several scenes when it was actually raining. In fact, the ending of Hero of Olnir happens during a thunderstorm, and he has to deal with the weather while he's trying to overcome the bad guys.
Yeah. Is there anyone in your books that you relate to? Do you kind of put your character into any of them?
I think, generally speaking, most or all characters. This is getting into philosophy now, and I am certainly no philosophist, but philosopher. I think that's the right word. Anyway, I think they're all part of the author. My main character tends to follow be more introverted and careful of thought, even when he's doing something stupid, which certainly suits me. But then one of his best friends, who's one of the three main characters, is just tells puns anytime he can.
Mm.
And I drive my kids nuts with dad jokes. So he's part me too, right? So the main character is certainly someone I identify with. He's introverted, but there's a lot put on his shoulders, and he struggles under the burden and steps up when needed, makes a lot of mistakes, and has to overcome them, usually the hard way. And I think I got a T-shirt that says something like that.
So your most of your books are fairly connected.
Yes, the War of the Nephilim series is a full series, and it's contiguous. It's continuous. Thank you. And there's 5 books out now. The 6th book is just about written. I should have it done by the end of the month for first draft. And it's a planned 8-book series.
Ah. Well, you are busy. Goodness.
I'm a little busy.
Well, when you were writing, did anything come up like you're just going along happily writing, and all of a sudden your character or the storyline takes a turn that you had not anticipated?
When I started writing fiction, I had I have no training. I hadn't read any books on writing fiction. I hadn't listened to any podcasts or listened to any lectures on YouTube or anything. I read a bunch of it and I wanted to do it. I had no idea what to do. I
Yeah.
just knew I wanted to try it. I had written a couple of books. They were nonfiction, and I knew how to write nonfiction. I spend most of my day writing nonfiction of one kind or another for my work.
Yeah.
So I pantsed it, and I just was making it up as I went. And if you're an author or an editor reading the first half of the first book in the series, which is called The Woodbender, that's the profession of the main character. He's a woodbender.
Yeah.
And if you read the first part of that book, you can tell. You can tell I was pantsing it. And I got partway into it and went, I don't know what I'm doing. And and so I stopped. I did what any good nerd does. I got a book, I read it. I went, oh, I should be outlining because that's way more my
Uh,
style. And so
yeah.
I outlined the rest of the book, and the rest of the book came out much better. Um, so, and just the title, The Woodbender, that's his profession. I thought that was interesting. One of the first thoughts I had was, if you had centuries to do your work,
Yeah.
would you cut, carve, splice, and form wood to suit your needs? Or would you just go up in the trees and bend it as it grew into shape? And I saw some of these they still do it in certain parts of the world,
Yeah.
like in India and Southeast Asia, where they bend the wood and it grows into the shape they need. And I was like, that could have been a real thing. If you
Yeah.
had hundreds of years, that might be something you did. You could be very patient, and because you had the time. Um, and so he's a
Hmm.
woodbender. That's what he does as a profession. He runs around in the trees, bending wood to make lattices and tools and planks and anything he needed.
That's an interesting concept. I've heard of young saplings being pulled over and made in a way that they're irmistakable, if that's a word, so that you could find a trail through the dense forest. Uh,
Right.
I, I I believe Indians had done that in North America.
Yeah.
Well, is there a key message you would like readers to take away from your books?
Um, the readers of your audience should explore. Try some new things. There is a lot of great material coming out in the Christian fiction genre right now. Uh, it's not all romance. There's a lot of Christian fiction that's romance. But there's a lot of new Christian authors that write thrillers or mysteries or all sorts of things. There's a whole genre of Christian fantasy writers. You can find a bunch of them on Realm Makers. You can find a bunch of them on Lorehaven. Those are websites. Go check out realmmakers.com and lorehaven.com. There's a lot of great material there. And some of them they vary widely. They might be very fantastical. Some of them are literally lit RPG type books. Some of them are grittier. My books tend to be grittier. I try to take my cue off the Bible, and while there's no foul language, there's no on-screen inappropriate sexual content. There is some violence. And so I tried to take that cue from the Bible and tried to match that as closely as I
Mm-hmm.
dared. And so there's things that'll grip you. And then there's other things that are great, cozy reads that you can sit on your couch on a cold day and read. Because in Maine we have cold days, like today. It was 0 degrees.
Ooh. Yeah, we finally warmed up a little. Uh, I think that we as Christians are missing the boat if we sugarcoat everything and try to pretend that there's not stuff going on.
Mm,
Episode number 3, John Galt Robinson writes stories about human trafficking.
mm.
I almost didn't include him because I thought, how in the world are you going to write a book about the sex trade, human trafficking, and not have a bunch of language that we just don't want to have to wade through, or descriptions of things that we know about, and so I believe he does it very artistically, still being authentic. He does an amazing amount of research. But you're right, Tripp. We have to acknowledge that, and it helps us when something unsavory pops up in front of us. We shouldn't be alarmed. We should say, yeah, this is the world I live in, and here's how I'll handle it. And I think Christian fiction can help us handle the things that come down the pike.
Yes, I agree. The world is it's not a nice place. Not anymore.
No,
And it wasn't pre-flood either. And so
right.
that's my books tried to capture that. And some readers are sensitive. They want every book to be like an Andy Griffith show.
Yeah,
And there's places and times for books like that. And then there's others that need to be a little more rugged. And I do tend to lean a little more on the rugged side.
yeah,
Honestly, in the Christian fiction genre, it's dominated by female authors, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. My wife is a Christian fiction author, and she writes a clean Christian romance. And there's a place and a time for all of that, but it is dominated by female authors, and I'm not entirely sure why, but it is. And I want to read something that's a little bit more, pardon the phrase, I don't know what else to call it, but manly. Like
yeah, yeah,
I want the book to be to have feelings. I want the book to be plot driven. I want challenges, and they overcome them that may not have anything to do with attracting a mate. Like oh, there's a bad dinosaur and I have a sword. I'm gonna go kill it. Just a little bit less Andy Griffith maybe, and a little bit more Indiana Jones.
yeah. Well,
Is that fair?
sometimes it is, and sometimes we need to kind of take a break and go to Andy Griffith. But
Yeah.
none of those people were married. No, no one was married on the Andy Griffith show. There's Aunt
That's a
Bee
good
and
point. I
so
haven't seen that in decades.
yeah. Would you like to give your author wife a plug?
Sure, my wife's author name is Evelyn Grace. There are actually several authors that have that name in the Christian
Oh,
fiction genre.
hmm.
So her author name, Evelyn Grace, came from the middle names of my mother and her mother. So she has a little bit of a tie to it. Look for her Haven series. Any of your readers and watchers that might want to read something that's a good, clean fiction set in Maine, with Maine coastline and Maine atmosphere.
And she does write romance.
She does clean Christian romance.
Okay, now this is going to be kind of interesting for any of the audience that do like romance, is to imagine the person that is writing your favorite romance book, and here's her romantic partner, Tripp Berry. So not not to put you on a spot, but they might watch this podcast with your wife's book and look back and forth at the book and okay.
I just got lucky. What can I tell you, Mike?
Well, yeah, I'm that way too. I married up big time.
That's me too.
Oh goodness. Well, listen, we might have some unpublished authors watching, and they might want to hear about any insights or tips that you might have on getting published. Go indie or look for an agent. What do you think?
I am independently published. My wife and I are both independently published, mostly because that's what my wife wanted to do, and I did not have the time to figure it all out.
Exactly.
I did follow up later, and I know how it works now, and so we do that publishing together. She is very strongly independent, wants to be an independent author. I could go traditional just as happily. As a businessman, I know how to prioritize my time and efforts, and I would be happy to do that maybe someday. Not a big push. That has nothing to do with the advice I would give to an aspiring author. The aspiring author, I give this piece of advice. It's the same advice I got from author Brandon Sanderson. I've mentioned him before on this series because he was a strong influence for me, and I did stand in line and talk to him one day face to face. And I told him I was an aspiring author, and I asked him what I should do, and he told me to get off my butt and start writing. If you're an aspiring author, go write. There's your first book is going to be terrible, and the second one will get better, and the third one after that will get better. It takes practice, so just start writing.
Yeah.
I heard one teacher say, writing professor say that your first million words is junk, and you only really start getting good after that. So you got to start writing.
I'm sure that's good advice. Yeah. Well, in your journey so far as a writer, are there any humorous or surprising moments along the way that happened?
Well, one thing I learned is that I am a lot better at amusing myself than I thought. I am very guilty of writing along and writing something funny, a funny situation, and then I break out laughing. And my wife, who is writing right next to me, will turn to me and she's like, "You just think you're funny." I said, yes, I do think I'm funny. I am not terribly funny in real life. I couldn't tell a joke well to save my life. But when you're writing, of course, you have time to think it through and make it funnier. And some people just do it naturally. I can't. But the magic of writing is that, you spend months writing a book, so you have plenty of time to go make things better.
Yeah. I probably find myself much funnier than other people do. In my first book, there was a character that told a kind of a dad joke to a person that wasn't wanting to be entertained, and the guy said, "You'd be a funnier comedian if you didn't try to tell jokes." So, being a comedian that doesn't tell jokes, I guess. Anyway, I found it interesting. So, do you have a secret to balancing your writing with the rest of your life?
Oh boy. I believe in a well-balanced life. And I use the 7-spoke wheel, if you've never heard of that. The idea is that if you picture your life as a wheel with 7 spokes, those spokes are, let's see if I can remember them all: financial, career, social, spiritual, physical, intellectual, and community. If you're 7 spokes on that wheel and you put some effort into each of those spokes, your wheel will be round and it will roll. But if you ignore something, your wheel will end up with a flat spot and you'll have a bumpy ride. I enjoyed that. I did never took it to the point of actually making like written out goals for each of my seven spokes and all of that. Uh, but if I spend a little bit of effort in each of those, then the wheel rolls smoother. Uh, I have there's a lot of things that for the physical spoke, I've done martial arts for decades and still do. I'm old now. I can't keep up with the younger people, but I still enjoy it, and it gets me some physical activity.
Yeah.
Uh, Intellectual reading and audiobooks constantly. In career, I own an engineering company and still do engineering work. And I've got 25 people that work for me, and that keeps me very busy. And it's a
Yeah.
growing company. Uh, but what I found was I wanted to I wanted to write. Always knew I wanted to write, but I wanted to build the kingdom.
Yeah.
And all of my books, every single one I've written, has some kind of Christian message and a short um, a short invitational in the back where those who read the book liked it and wondered what all this meant could read it and understand that, oh no, this stuff's real, and maybe turn to God or plant a seed so that they would one day come to God. And so when you're building the kingdom, Mike, it hardly seems like work.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. But you're working on a book now?
I am. The book 6 of the War of the Nephilim series
Yeah.
is the rough draft is almost done, and should be available this summer. I usually try to publish in August for this series. So it's taking place back in their hometown, in their home country, and it's my attempt at political intrigue. Each of these books, this is my practice series. It was always intended to be just practice because I haven't retired yet, where I would write full time. This is just practice.
Uh-huh.
So you've got a book that takes place in a wilderness area, and then you got a book that takes place in a more of an urban area, and then one that's on the seas, and then one that's on subterranean. And so I'm exploring different settings, and then I'm also each book is different. Like one might be more straight up panic action, and then another one's more adventure. One might be tactical. One takes place on the high seas and is very naval military battles. Uh, and one was more young adult. It really read more like a young adult, and this latest one is a bit more of a political intrigue. So I'm exploring different things as I'm writing this series because it was meant to be practice, yet people seem to like them. So that's good.
Yeah. Keep doing what you're doing. How do you engage with your readers?
Right now, I just have a Facebook page. I don't even have a newsletter up yet. I've had several requests for a newsletter. It's
Hmm.
coming. But for now, I got a Facebook page. Just do a search for author Tripp Berry on Facebook. It should come right up.
Okay. Author Tripp Berry. Well, this is really I found it a great conversation. I always do. Christian fiction authors are interesting people. I really believe that. So, as we close out here, is there a message you'd like to leave with your audience?
Yeah. I guess I'll leave this. It feels a little preachy to me, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Go for it.
Uh, you can't get into heaven without a relationship with Jesus Christ. And there is no such thing as a relationship without communication. So if you're not reading what Jesus had to say and not praying back to him on a routine basis, you're not communicating. And if you're not communicating, you're not in relationship. And that's a dangerous place to be.
Very.
So I'm not saying it's a salvation issue. I am saying that you don't have relationship without communication. It took me decades, Mike, to learn that. And it's really hit home with me recently. I think if every Christian spent time daily in the Word and in prayer, this world would look a lot different.
Oh, I believe that I could interview non-Christian authors and Christian authors, and we wouldn't have to talk about whether you believe in God or don't believe in God. You'd be able to tell the difference as day and night.
Yep.
And I wish we could all be Christian authors. But
Amen.
Anyway, so Tripp, thank you so much for breaking away from your routine and spending this time with us. I appreciate it so much. Could we say a short prayer here?
Please do.
Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for Tripp Berry, for the messages that he puts in his books, for his devotion and dedication to you. And we know that you're doing great and wonderful things through his work, that people are having a life-changed experience. Tripp is causing them to think about it. And my goodness, what better could we do than plant seeds? So we just thank you for Tripp and the work that he does, and the wonderful life he's built around his belief in you. So spread your grace liberally and keep your loving hand over him. We ask all these things in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Mike. Well said. I appreciate it.
You have a great rest of your day, and I'll give you a heads up when this episode comes out. Take care. I hope you enjoy getting to know the authors I present here on the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast. Please support them by taking a look at their books. If you buy one, or two, or more of their books, make sure you leave a review wherever you bought those books. I'm extremely interested in what you think of this podcast, so please comment with any suggestions you might have, like who would you like for me to interview? If you find this podcast informative, please share it with your friends. If you find this podcast inspirational, please subscribe. If you find it both informational and inspirational, just tell the whole wide world any way you can. Don't forget to like us, because I have high hopes for the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast. I hope you do too. Until next time, may God bless you abundantly and cover you with His amazing grace. Keep reading clean. This is Mike Baines, out.